Ladies and gentlemen, please, you can bring your coffee to your table and seat. We're going to commence this morning session, and we have the distinct privilege of having the Deputy Commander of United States Central Command, Lieutenant General John Allen, United States Marine Corps. We have an unusual situation where he is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy with honors. And we have a midshipman here gracing this morning's session, as yesterday. And a quarter of a century later, plus one, he became the Commandant of the Naval Academy, the first Marine Corps officer in the history of the institution to become its Commandant. I've met him before. He's an intellectual and an academic and an educator, in addition to being a commander and a leader of men and women in our armed forces, those who've been deployed and mobilized abroad in the forward presence in Qatar. General Allen.
John, thanks very much for that terrific introduction. It's great to see the cadets and midshipmen here this morning from, I understand, VMI. I had my picture taken with them. I was honored to have that happen, by the way, from the Institute and West Point and the Naval Academy. And we'll see how that West Point Naval Academy thing goes a little bit later here, won't we? As Dr. Anthony said, I was the first Marine Commandant at the Naval Academy. I've been so far the only Marine Commandant at the Naval Academy, and my Navy classmates from the Great Bicentennial class of 1976 say that they'll call this the Great Experiment, and we'll see where that goes. I would normally get dressed up for a conference like this. It certainly is worthy of a little bit of polish on a morning like today, but I have to apologize to you from the outset that I have to walk straight off the stage to go to the retirement of our great 34th Commandant of the Marine Corps, and then immediately into the change of command between our great General Jim Conway and our soon-to-be instituted General Jim Amos. So with that, assalamu alaikum wa sabah khair. It is truly a pleasure to spend some time with you this morning and to discuss the future of U.S.-Arab relations. Now, given my profession, my current assignment, my personal experiences, I believe that there are few areas of more critical importance to our nation than having a solid understanding of not only where we are, but where we see our relationships progressing in the Arab region. Before I begin my remarks this morning, and because the Central Command region embraces so much of that portion of the Middle East that is home to our Arab friends, I would like to take a few minutes to describe the U.S. Central Command and our area of responsibility. CENTCOM, as we call it, is both the smallest of the 6 regional U.S. combatant commands and, as we're proud to note, the one with the greatest number of challenges. Our region embraces 20 countries, from Egypt in the west, to Kazakhstan in the north, to Pakistan in the east, to Yemen and the waters off Somalia in the south. It is an area of more than 4 million square miles, 3 major economic and geographic choke points, the Suez Canal, the Bab el-Mandeb, and the Strait of Hormuz, and a number of regions, areas in that portion of the world where central governments strain with varied levels of success to extend the writs of their authorities. Sometimes it's called ungoverned or undergoverned spaces. But that's really not the issue. It is the straining of the central governments to extend their writ, because in those ungoverned spaces there is some form of government. Our region includes 530 million people from at least 22 major ethnic groups who speak 18 major languages and innumerable dialects, and they ascribe to 4 great religions. With 64% of the known oil reserves and 46% of the known gas reserves, the area is abundantly rich in energy resources, but desperately poor in fresh water. It has countries with the highest per capita income in the world. One of them with a per capita income, not quite certain, but it's somewhere between $88,000 and $100,000 per year. but others rank in the lowest 5 in the world with per capita income of less than $800 per year. Regional birth rates are nearly twice what they are in the United States, and in 18 of the 20 states in our region, young people between the ages of 15 and 29 constitute over 40% of the population. And economic opportunities for many of them are insufficient, often leaving large segments of the populations of this region with little economic hope. Central Command is, of course, overseeing major operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as a theater-wide campaign against al-Qaeda and its extremist allies. Overall, though, the Central Command region remains an area in which the most pressing security challenges include transnational extremist groups and states that pursue destabilizing actions. That is, of course, but one of the reasons that we keep a very close eye on Iran. These are the challenges on which we all focus our efforts every day, recognizing that in some cases there are combinations of transnational groups and states, particularly destabilizing actions and projecting those on other states within the region. Indeed, the nexus of the challenges where sovereign states support militia proxies or extremist elements in other countries, that nexus is of particular concern for us. In virtually every country in the region, that concern is shared. Not just shared in our region, but shared in the adjacent regions and certainly in our homeland today. However, even while we're concerned with these challenges and continue to carry out 2 major military operations, building enduring partnerships in the region is a major goal of the Central Command, helping to increase the capabilities of other nations' security forces to address the challenges endemic in the region. Nearly 200,000 U.S. military personnel and tens of thousands of American civilians are deployed into CENTCOM's area of responsibility. Conducting mostly multilateral operations, these run the gamut from extensive counterterrorism and counterinsurgency operations with a number of like-minded nations to active counter-piracy, counter-narcotics, counter-human trafficking operations both at sea and ashore. But just as importantly, we're engaged in stability and support engagements with the fragile governments and in humanitarian and disaster relief operations throughout the region. Pakistan comes to mind immediately, and the tremendous flood that has, in many respects, changed the political dynamic. You may be thinking that this doesn't sound like the domain of the military. Indeed, the differences between some of the traditional functions performed by the military and our State Department, those traditional activities of state and defense, have in fact narrowed over the last decade. Consequently, coordination and in cooperation with our State Department colleagues, not only in this town, but also in the embassies throughout the region. And we work very closely with host nations' governments' agencies while conducting military exercises, as many as 40 a year in our region, and coordinating substantial security assistance efforts throughout the region. Now, with such a large number of potential topics to discuss this morning, I'd like to discuss the close ties that CENTCOM and by extension the United States enjoys within the area of operations, and the hard work that we have committed to ensuring that these relationships remain vibrant and strong. I'd like to begin by acknowledging my admiration of the National Council of U.S.-Arab Relations. Your tireless work has done more than stabilize and improve the vital understanding of the larger American population regarding the contribution of Arab Americans. It's done more than that. It has also improved our understanding as a nation of our Arab brethren in the Middle East. Now, I've served in and out of the Middle East region for much of my career, but found my life changed dramatically after my service in Iraq's Al-Anbar province for a brief period in 2006, for all of 2007, and a part of 2008. As you may recall, this period was during the darkest days in the violence in Iraq. And while we were in Al-Anbar, we sought to empower the Arab population there to resist the ravages of al-Qaeda's onslaught, During this time, I was personally in motion, traveling throughout the desert, along the Euphrates, engaging with the sheikhs, meeting with political and business leaders, and doing so not only in Ar-Ramadi and Fallujah and Baghdad, but also in Amman and Doha and Dubai. The counterinsurgency battlefield on which we fought spanned not just Al-Anbar, not just Iraq, it spanned the region. Without exaggeration, I can tell you that during my time in Al-Anbar, I grew to deeply respect the people of the ancient Arab tribes arrayed along the great Euphrates River and in the western desert. Specifically, I came to admire their resilience, their spirituality, and their faith. I came to respect their courage, and almost without exception, their uncommon fighting capabilities. In the end, I would come away from the experience a changed man, changed for the better, for my exposure and for my immersion in the Arab culture of Al-Anbar. That admiration continues today in my current duties. I'm completing my 40th year of service in 2011. These will have been the best, the most formative experiences of my career. All this colors my dedication to our relationships in the region, our relationships with the Arab states in CENTCOM's area of responsibility. So this gathering, the Arab-U.S. Policymakers Conference, and our host, the National Council on U.S.-Arab Relations, has posed the question, Arab-U.S. relations, going where? So we're all clear, CENTCOM is not a policy-making entity. Certainly, the command participates in policy formulation when we're invited by the policy community, but CENTCOM's role is primarily the operationalization of policy. And it is here where perhaps on the ground in the Arab Middle East, where part of the answer can be found to where Arab-U.S. relations are headed. While there are many and constant challenges, frankly, I'm personally optimistic. Without hesitation, I can tell you that CENTCOM's previous commander, General David Petraeus, and its current commander, General James Mattis, are dedicated to forging the closest possible relations with our Arab friends and partners in the region. The many years of service those men have given to the region have led them to the same conclusion. CENTCOM remains committed to the security of our Arab partners in the region, and through our military-to-military relationships, we seek to deepen and improve Arab-U.S. relations with virtually every Arab state in the Middle East. Now, this isn't a recent phenomenon. Relations have been improving for years under the noted leadership of a succession of CENTCOM commanders. One of them, in particular, is here with us this morning, General Joe Hoare, who did so much to facilitate this gradual, this substantial improvement, a function of constant and constructive engagement. And it has underwritten and it has reinforced a clear U.S. policy goal to enhance U.S. relations with the Arab world. And while there are sometimes truly formidable challenges in our relations, on the whole, the military-to-military relationships reflect commonly shared security goals, aspirations for the region, and also reflect a growing concern over the rhetoric and actions of Iran, particularly over its nuclear program. Arab-U.S. relations have evolved dramatically since the period of Operation Desert Storm, following September 11th, 2001, and including regional support to Operation Enduring and Iraqi Freedom. Against this backdrop and in the aftermath of OIF, now Operation New Dawn in Iraq, we are in active conversations with our friends and partners about what the U.S. regional posture should look like in the Gulf and in the Middle East over the long term. But simply put, the U.S. will not depart the region. Indeed, we're committed to its long-term political and economic stability. We're committed to the sovereignty of our friends. We're committed to the free flow of commerce and energy resources, not just in the region, not just for the region, but for the global economy. Our presence over the long term will be an unambiguous emblem of U.S. commitment to the stability of the region. As we discuss America's long-term posture in the Middle East, all of these factors, particularly the sovereignty of our friends and their political and economic stability and viability, will figure prominently. Now, to give purpose to these close relations and to provide for increased capacity and interoperability with our partners, we have undertaken the development of a regional security architecture designed to serve as a construct within which our partners may strengthen national and regional defense capabilities. This is done by building networks of systems and activities that enhance regional security and stability. Over the past few years, we've worked closely with the countries of the Arabian Peninsula, as well as others of our regional partners, to develop this construct for addressing common security challenges. It is important to note at the outset that participation in the regional security architecture is a sovereign decision of each participant. There are no treaties. There are no binding formal agreements. It is simply a common sense security apparatus put into action. And here's how it works. Theoretically, the architecture's core focus involves protecting and improving our mutual defense capabilities, strengthening our bilateral cooperation, developing interoperability, and even achieving regional and multilateral capabilities. Practically, the regional security architecture is made up of an array of major activities, the centerpiece of which is the shared early warning system and the growing and increasingly potent integrated air and missile defense network in development with our Gulf and regional partners. Our nation's efforts have developed with several intents, and nations is plural with an apostrophe, to resist coercion and to deter aggression, to counter proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and related technology, to combat violent extremism and terrorism, to counter piracy and illicit trafficking, including the tragedy of human trafficking, to defend lines of communication, including economic trade, to secure borders and infrastructure, to provide humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, and to conduct both the preparation for and, if necessary, the execution of consequence management. A lot of activity. In support of this growing security architecture, many countries in the region actively participate in an extensive array of ground, maritime, aviation, and special operations exercises, each designed to respond to different types of known and emerging threats. These major bilateral and multilateral exercises, as I said before, about 40 a year, known as Bright Star, Eagle Resolve, Iron Falcon, Shamal, and our newest regional exercise, Eager Lion, help strengthen each participating country's ability to maintain security inside its own borders, protect critical infrastructure, and create or enhance interoperability with the United States forces and regional militaries as a joint undertaking, particularly in deterring regional aggression. The partnerships that have evolved from these activities have contributed directly to improving our overall effectiveness in ongoing multilateral operations and security initiatives. Ultimately, the net outcome of these efforts has been the establishment and the refinement of mechanisms and capabilities which, while valuable in coordinating activities in one area, such as in countering piracy and smuggling, frequently provide enhanced capability and flexibility to address crises in other areas. Often, for example, the progress made in generating cooperation for one set of issues will have symbiotic effects elsewhere, such as disaster relief capabilities improve a nation's abilities in consequence management, thereby promoting greater individual and collective capability. Now, in conjunction with the efforts already mentioned, CENTCOM, through the Department of Defense, has also worked hard to increase significantly the numbers of personnel from the region attending programs such as the International Military Education and Training Program. You know it as IMET. This program, in case you're not familiar with it, facilitates the attendance of foreign military, usually officers, at U.S. military schools. The benefits of the IMET program, which is ultimately a strategic investment in ideas and people, is that it allows us to better understand each other. It increases our friendship, and in crisis, enhances coordination and interoperability. My own view is that this increase of our own exposure to our Arab friends at U.S. schools has been nothing but good for the U.S. military, and I believe, because of that, for the region. We will continue to endeavor to increase the quotas wherever and however we can. Another aspect of the regional security architecture, one that is boosting significantly the individual and collective capabilities of regional Arab militaries, is the development and the proliferation of centers of excellence, which focus U.S. and regional expertise in key capability areas. For example, in special operations, in air warfare, in integrated air and missile defense, in command and control, in maritime security, and in others. Located and distributed across the region, these centers of excellence, some built and some to be built, are increasingly upping the game of the U.S. with our partners. With interoperability our goal, the centers are and will continue increasingly to play vital roles in the region and will permit states to come together at an individual or a collective level for combined training that is simultaneously of high quality, cutting edge, and economical. While there are other powerful aspects of the regional security architecture, aspects I could discuss this morning, I'm afraid the time won't permit. This morning I've spoken about relationships and cooperation and how we, the U.S. Central Command, are forging partnerships, both bilaterally and multilaterally, as a means of responding to common security challenges, concerns, and threats. As we've built the regional security architecture, we've done so mindful of the ancient history and the sovereign and celebrated pride of the Arab people and their governments. One lesson we may draw from the tapestry of the sweep of great history of our Arab peoples is that when various elements of the region have interacted and worked together, the sum has evolved to be far greater than the parts. This is, in fact, a bit like the effect of the spread of one of history's great mathematical discoveries, the Arab invention of Sifr, the notion of zero. It was an invention which all, including the West, gained enormously as it was shared. And we hope the kinds of combinations underway today in the military-to-military cooperation will create further opportunities to enhance not just the region, but the remaining portions of the world. At gatherings such as this, there will be inevitable debates over policy. This region is beset with crises. It has known little peace during much of the last century, and precious little of it in this one. It'll be tempting in that context for policy, both ancient and contemporary, to be blamed for the situations we all are facing in this region today. But if we're looking for bright lights, if we're seeking examples of cooperation, where policy has, in fact, given birth to encouraging trends, I suggest that the regional security architecture and its component parts is evidence of the direction of Arab-U.S. relations today and over the long term. With this in mind, I'd like to emphasize that the security efforts being pursued by our Arab partners are facilitating not just a regional, but a global security environment that enhances. It increases confidence among neighbors, improves deterrence and mutual defense, and enhances security and stability. These are global returns on the investments of our friends. U.S. Central Command is honored to work closely with our Arab partners as we address common security challenges. And we have done, as we have done frequently of late, we encourage our Arab friends, the Arab states of the region, to embrace and to help shape the increasingly capable Iraqi security forces. Much can be done within the context of the RSA in conjunction with our partners to bring Iraq into this strong security relationship. We can all acknowledge that much remains to be done in the formation of the government in Iraq. However, in knowing the Iraqi people as I do, I'm optimistic over the long term and how this will turn out. And we would encourage our Arab friends now to embrace and, as they can, enhance Iraq's security capabilities. Such a step would undoubtedly benefit the entire region as we continue to draw down American formations under Operation New Dawn. When I started my comments, I told you that we were the smallest of the U.S. combatant commands, but with the greatest number of challenges, and that is certainly true. I've never seen the bottom of my inbox. However, we experienced throughout our area many success stories reflecting close, long-standing relationships, dedicated regional partners who are intimately involved in our many efforts to set the strategic stage to support our common cause. So on behalf of the 200,000 U.S. service members and the tens of thousands of American civilians serving in CENTCOM, I want to thank you for your participation in this important conference. And again, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you this morning. Shukran jazilan wa masalama.
Thank you very, very much for well presented, well thought out, well organized, well articulated presentation. This is one of the finest we've had from a serving military officer in the history of these conferences. General has agreed to take a question, and it has to do with the Horn of Africa area and the distinction between the newer command of Africa Command, and particularly with regard to Somalia piracy, as well as Yemen. These are weekly, as sometimes daily, in the news. If he would elaborate on this. And from the Yemen side of it, that there are many proposals to enhance the defense and security part of our relationship, some even more than $1 billion that people are talking about. But from a Yemen perspective, the more fundamental, massive, and pervasive human needs that impact security and stability have to do with the countries and the population's economic and social needs, which may be beyond Central Command's writ, but would invite your comment nonetheless. Secondly, with regard to the piracy issue, it cost, according to one source, $50,000 for each transiting of that area in insurance cost. And this is of an enormous effect to one of your missions, which is to protect the economic interest, not just the political and the social stability interest there. $50,000 in insurance, which goes to the bottom line of the shipping companies and the international oil companies there. And related, tucked into that is, what if there is a fiscal, budgetary, congressional cut and the overall defense allocations, appropriations, how will that affect your mission, including AFRICOM, in this Horn of Africa area of Yemen, Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, Sudan? They're all wrapped into that one question of the Horn of Africa area, General.
That was masterful, I have to tell you. In that one question, I have, I think, 6 requirements.
Well, they're all related. There's
very well done.
Lots of semicolons.
Yeah, the punctuation at the belt-fed rank. First, let me talk for a bit about AFRICOM. AFRICOM is our newest of the combatant commands, led by General Kip Ward. We shared for some period of time a number of states, and in October of '08, those states in the Horn of Africa moved from CENTCOM's region to the AFRICOM region for the purposes of U.S. military planning and engagement and so on. When we are at our best in our relations between combatant commands, the boundaries that people draw on maps actually blur. And we talk to AFRICOM every day about not just the security challenges, but frankly the security opportunities. And we never miss an opportunity to partner with AFRICOM in developing the capacity of the states in the Africa Command. But on those occasions where there are shared security concerns, we also may partner with AFRICOM in the shifting of forces across the region, primarily naval forces and often associated with piracy. Piracy is a major concern, and I'll shift to discussing the Horn of Africa and particularly Somalia. Somalia, of course, has in many respects lost the capacity to extend a writ of government virtually anywhere in that country. As a result of that, there are large, what people would call ungoverned areas, and in many of those areas there are predatory elements that are conducting piracy, both in the Gulf of Somalia, the Gulf of Aden, and in the Indian Ocean. In fact, some of the abilities of some of these pirates to get deep into the Indian Ocean has been quite startling, actually. The good news is that the international community is embracing the issue of piracy and countering piracy. And from the lanes that have been established for secure transit of maritime traffic coming out of the Bab el-Mandeb, passing through the Strait of the Gulf of Aden and into the larger Indian Ocean, there are often navies from as many as 10 to 15 countries operating in close cooperation with each other, in close cooperation with the United States, to provide for secure passage. However, there will be occasions, depending on the conditions of the sea state and the time of the year and the direction of the monsoon, etc., when the pirates will have success in closing on and confronting a particular ship. And in that regard, the Fifth Fleet, the United States Navy, has dedicated not a small amount of time with the maritime industry, talking about certain best practices that could be embraced by the maritime industry and by ships in particular to provide for their security, such things as barbed wire along the gunnels, the moment that you see an unidentified small boat approaching, going to maximum speed, varying your course, and in fact, if necessary, hiring armed security crews. Where we have seen best practices exercised, we have seen that the rate of piracy to be very low. Meanwhile, the ships of our friends from Europe and Asia and from the region and the United States have done a pretty significant job, we think. It's not always successful, but it has made a difference in reducing both the rate of piracy and the success of piracy. And so we take that to be a very serious mission. Even though we are facing probably more austere times with regard to our budget, we don't anticipate any reduction in the attention that both CENTCOM and AFRICOM will pay to this particular issue, because it is about the global economy and it is about providing for freedom of navigation, which is a central mission of our great Navy, and we will continue to embrace that. With regard to the Horn of Africa in general and Yemen, we view Yemen as a friendly state. We have close relations with the government there, President Saleh. We have worked very diligently at Central Command to do what we can with Yemen to assist Yemen in its efforts in counterterrorism. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula has emerged as a threat organization, a violent extremist organization with significant reach. And we know that Yemen seeks to deal with that terrorist threat. We are working closely with Yemen not just in the area of counterterrorism, but seeking to help Yemen to create greater capacity and capability within its conventional forces to provide a security environment in which we can do the next important point that you mentioned a few moments ago, Doctor, and that is provide for real development in that country. The State Department, led by Ambassador Firestein, who's recently arrived in Sana'a, has a long-term development program which is intended to provide Yemen the assistance that it needs in conjunction with other states in the region who are all actively engaged in supporting Yemen, to provide for development, to provide for improvements in agriculture, in water management, and in doing so, and you won't be able to do so until the security environment is such that it can provide for the initiation and completion of these projects. We're working closely with Yemen's armed forces to improve that capacity. We don't attach a dollar figure to it yet. It's an annual allocation of funding. At some point we may discuss a long-term program, but for now, as we continue to develop plans, we're working at 1 year to the next. And so we seek to be helpful to Yemen. We seek to assist Yemen in dealing with its terrorist problem, and in doing so, create the conditions for long-term development in cooperation with and in support of our great country team in the embassy in Sana'a and Ambassador Firestein. So I think I hit most of your points.
Yes, you did. Please join me in thanking General Allen.
I'm sorry, I've got to run.
No, can we publish this?
Yes, we can.
Please, the next session, which is on Palestine, come forward with its presenters and chair. A few of the questions that were put last time can be put to this panel and other ones during the course of the day. They were well put, the questions that weren't asked. Right here.